Hey, good Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we appreciate you hopping on for your noon forecast. I also appreciate Heather for filling in for us yesterday. Yes, as you can hear, I did lose my voice the past few days. Allergies, man, have really gotten to me this year, but I am gaining it back. So bear with me as I sound a little different today, and pray for my voice if that's your type of thing. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the forecast today. Nebraska is in the bullseye for large hail, tornado threat, and high wind. There is an enhanced risk, a level 3 risk for storms today. Now that slight risk goes all the way up into the Midwest and then all the way out to places like Utah and Nevada. We have a risk for high wind in those areas as well. And then we also have a tropical update for you today. Could we see a tropical storm soon? So that next named storm will be Tropical Storm Dexter if it intensifies. So right now it's just Invest 93L, and it's currently off the coast of Florida. It's making all of these storms out here that did cause some really intense flooding yesterday. So we'll see what that does, but it's expected to move west and then up into places like Louisiana and Mississippi. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. Let's take a look at what happened yesterday. Yesterday we saw some really intense flooding off the East Coast. That includes places like New York, Pennsylvania, all the way down into places like Maryland and Virginia, and then all the way up to the north and east. We saw some historic flooding out in New Jersey yesterday, which I know a lot of people were talking about on Twitter and Facebook. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of that flooding that we saw out of Pennsylvania. Take a look at this, Mount Joy, Pennsylvania. Now we don't have the audio for you on here. However, we do have that for you on our YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok pages. Now this woman was trapped on the highway in traffic, in standstill traffic, during a flash flood warning. She could see the water rising next to her car on the side of the highway. And what police were doing is they had closed the road in front of them, but they were trying to get everyone to turn around. But it's hard to get that many people to turn around so quickly. And it was a very dangerous situation, but I'm glad the police were there to help them along. There was an update from Lethea, I hope that I'm saying that correctly, who gave us permission to use her video. She did make it home safely yesterday. Another video out of Mount Joy, Lucy Liu here showing the flooding in this area. She said that this was a floodplain, but this is in the main, I think it's Main Street. Flooding rising up over the sidewalks, many people struggling to get through here. People are blocking traffic, telling others not to go through this area, but yet some still persist through. I do think that they got through okay though. I mean, just an intense situation across Pennsylvania and New York and New Jersey yesterday. Now let's go ahead and go back across to the west. What did we see in terms of severe weather? Well, in Nebraska and South Dakota yesterday, really it was a wind event. That hail was kind of off and on. I think at times we did get some larger hailstones like ping pong ball size hail, but for the most part it was off and on. Earlier in the day, out near Denver, Colorado, just to the south of Denver, Colorado, take a look at this video. It's a Landspout, but it looks very impressive. It's blowing debris across the road here in front of semis. You can see, I think it took off a portion of a sign there. Very impressive. Now, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, they said that this Landspout did do some damage. However, all people are accounted for and there are no injuries to report. And here's some videos of that damage in Douglas County, Colorado. Yeah, very busy day yesterday. What do we say? Don't underestimate those marginal risks because you can absolutely get something impressive out of it. Now today it's not a marginal risk, it is an enhanced risk, a level 3 risk. And what we're really watching for here is that warm front across Minnesota and then a cold front across South Dakota. That's what we're watching for to initiate some of these storms later on today. You can see that low pressure system pretty well defined right in this area, just sitting over the northeastern side of Colorado and Nebraska right now. Now we are pretty dry across the East Coast currently. I think as you go a little bit farther to the south, you're going to see a little bit more rain activity. This could still cause a flood issue today, flood issue across Florida as we've got that tropical system trying to get its act together. And then of course we've got all of that rain across the Dakotas. Temperatures Hey, we'll talk about warmer temperatures coming your way. You want that summer heat? We've got it. We'll talk about that later in the forecast. Right now at the 80s and 90s. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of this forecast here. Let's get into some real good content. We have level 3, enhanced risk, right in the center of Nebraska for today. But that slight risk goes all the way up into places like northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin. We have a slight risk for places like Wyoming and all the way up to northern Utah into Salt Lake City. Now, what are we watching for here? Hail, wind, tornado risk right there. We've got that wind and hail risk all the way up to Minnesota. Wind and tornado risk for others, but mainly a wind risk as you head farther out to the west. Tomorrow, Chicago and the bullseye for storms. But hey, Thursday, no significant storms as of now expected on Thursday. That's whenever we turn our attention down to the south for tropical activity. Let's get into your hail risk for today. Your hail risk for today does include Minneapolis, all the way across central South Dakota and Nebraska, all the way up in places like Wyoming and Montana. You know, we're looking for some of these deeper oranges in here. Yeah, we're gonna get a few of them. We're gonna get a few larger hailstones, maybe up to the size of a hen egg, just slightly larger than the size of a golf ball. But I'm not looking for a ton of large hail today. It's gonna be very isolated today. 2-inch size hail, hen egg size hail is what we're watching for your maximum hail size today. Where will that be? I think that has a really good chance anywhere across really Nebraska and southern South Dakota. But we could also see some very isolated hailstones across Wyoming and maybe even a few smaller hailstones into places like Minneapolis and Duluth. So there are your hail sizes for today. We have a great question coming in from Colin. Storms are supposed to be pretty big in Omaha tonight and tomorrow morning. What will that bring? Yeah, as you head over to places like Omaha, it is going to be a late event. So we're talking about large hail in this area up to the size of a golf ball. But I think what you're really going to see, especially later on in the evening, is that wind event, okay? So we are expecting some strong winds out of this storm here, and we even have a risk for tornadoes. So there's your tornado risk here. We have a level 1 tornado risk highlighted there in green. That goes all the way down into central and southern Nebraska. And then all the way up to the north, we have a second area for tornadoes here from Duluth to Minneapolis into northern Wisconsin. So just give you a minute for your tornado forecast here. I know it's a level 1, but it's still something to be well aware of today. Alrighty, moving on to your wind forecast here. Now, I told you that, we were talking about Omaha. What about that wind risk in Omaha today? Now, our levels here stop at 73 miles an hour. I do think that a few very isolated areas, especially places like Sioux Falls, maybe Omaha included in that, North Platte, like this area right in here, could get some higher wind speeds, okay? I'm including Omaha in this here. So we're talking about maybe 75, 80 miles an hour. I didn't want to put that second level or that second layer on this area because I don't want you to think you're getting 90, 95 mile per hour wind speeds. No, I don't think that that's possible today. But could we get a 75, 80 mile per hour wind speed? Absolutely. I think that's possible. Now again, remember, 80 miles an hour is a level 1, a pretty decent level 1 category 1 hurricane. So that, those are strong wind speeds. That's absolutely impactful, just as impactful as potential tornado, okay? So high wind will be impactful in this area this evening, okay? So again, I'm going to say that those stronger wind speeds could go anywhere from Sioux Falls all the way to North Platte, including Omaha there. We could see some high wind speeds out near Sheridan, all the way to Salt Lake City. We'll go down to the south here just for a minute and go into southern Arizona. We could see some high wind speeds in this area. What the National Weather Service and Storm Prediction Center are warning of us here is very isolated potential haboobs and blowing dust across the roadways. And what that means is it could lower your visibility. Going back up to the north, again, your most likely place to see high wind today will be into central Nebraska and then out to the west into places like Salt Lake City, Sheridan, and Cheyenne. There's your high wind for today. Let's go to your timeline now. So I'm going to go wide first, go to the east coast, then we're going to go up to the north, and then we're going to go out to the west. So you can see that a lot of people are getting rain today, even portions of central Texas, which does have a flood risk for today. Most of those storms will pop up later on this afternoon and into this evening. You're going to start out with a hail risk and a tornado risk, and then you're going to transition into a tornado and a wind risk later on tonight. So let's go ahead and let's zoom down here. You can see that we've got some isolated to scattered showers across the East Coast today, encouraging that flood risk once again. We have a level 2 flood risk here. That is a slight risk for most areas on the East Coast, especially the Northeast, and we'll get a look at your flood map here in just a few minutes. Let's talk about the timing for places in the Northern Plains, Northern Rockies, and Northern Midwest. So between about 3 and 11 o'clock tonight is whenever we'll see those storms most likely go severe. So they'll fire at the earliest 2 to 3 o'clock this afternoon. Then what we'll see from an isolated risk to more of a congealed line of storms through the evening hours, we are expecting to see storms track to the south and east as this front pushes them off to the south and east. You could have several rounds of storms here, the first more impressive than the second, but most of us will only see that one round of storms. We've got several different areas that we're watching for here. Now as we head back to the west, 3 o'clock to midnight tonight, so not as late into the overnight hours, including Salt Lake City and Casper, Wyoming, what we're watching for here will be that high wind. Okay, so not necessarily a hail risk. I think the hail risk is going to be pretty low in this area. Tornado risk also on the lower side. It's really going to be a wind risk in this area as well. Again, remember 3 o'clock this afternoon until 11 o'clock this evening. Now I told you I'd mention your flood risk today. I told you it was most of the East Coast here. So we've got places like Georgia all the way to South Carolina, North Carolina, into the Virginias, Kentucky included in this flood risk, and then right along where we saw all of that flooding yesterday into places like New Jersey and New York. Several rounds of storms have hit this area already. It is vulnerable right now because it already has very saturated soils. All of that water is sitting in the soils right now. So as we get more water coming down on top of it, where does it go? Onto the roadways, ponding on the roadways, flooding on the roadways. That's what we're expecting here today. Level 2 risk, you know that place in your neighborhood that seems to always flood? That's where you're going to watch later on tonight and into early tomorrow morning. And then with ongoing showers and storms today, after a very significant flooding risk yesterday, we are once again watching for flooding down in Texas today. Now, as we go into the middle of the work week, we will be watching the Gulf Coast for significant flooding chances. Mainly on Thursday and Friday is what we're watching for these significant flooding chances as significant rainfall comes into this area from a tropical system sitting down in the Gulf. Now that tropical system has not made it to the Gulf quite yet. Right now it's sitting just off the coast of Florida, but it will meander off to the west and into the Gulf over the next few days. So right now what we have is we've got a cluster of storms that are rotating in this area. It's a low pressure system that is trying to get its act together. It's trying to organize here. We have a 40% chance of that organization happening in the next 2 days to make that our next tropical storm. If it does in the next 2 days, or I guess the next storm that we get, that will be named Tropical Storm Dexter. Okay, so that will continue to track off to the west and then up, making landfall at some place between New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama, maybe even the far western side of Florida. So right in here is where we're expecting that tropical system to land. Now, it just depends on what it does in the Gulf. What is it going to do in the Gulf? Is it going to suck up all this moisture? Is it going to get rid of that shear and organize itself to come into a tropical storm? We'll have to see. A lot of that is unknown. But what we do know here is that we have a pretty decent likelihood for some heavy rain off the coast of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. And that's going to increase those flood risks over the next few days. So we know that through the middle and through the end of the work week, we have a pretty decent chance for flooding in this area, specifically off the coast of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. So there's your tropical update. What about temperatures? Well, temperatures are going to warm up, okay? You get those springtime storms right now. It's been a little bit cooler for some of us over the past few days. Are you ready for the heat? Are you ready for a sweaty forecast? Let's talk about that in a minute. I do want to mention for tomorrow, Chicago is in the risk for Storms tomorrow, a slight risk right now, a level 2 risk, including northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. And here's a look at your future radar for tomorrow for Chicago. We're going to zoom right down into Chicago here because I'm sure we have a few Chicago people watching right now. You can see those storms coming in later in the evening hours. Now, we did get a flood risk in Chicago. What was that, like last week? Last Tuesday night? A week ago from today, I think. Yeah, we're expecting more storms in that area. So let's take a look at this flood risk here. There's your storms starting off on the western side of Illinois and Wisconsin around 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, continuing to track to the east right around or shortly after rush hour, shortly after you get off work, right around or after dinner time for Chicago. All right, now let's talk about temperatures. Temperatures, as comfortable as they are for this time of the year, today and tomorrow. Look at this, we get cooler temperatures starting on Wednesday and Thursday through the central portion of the U.S. That's awesome. This front bringing storms today, bringing cooler temperatures tomorrow. But just wait, I have some bad news. Are you ready for the heat? Yeah, it looks like 90s and triple digits are likely to return for a good portion of the country as we head into the end of the work week. So here you are Thursday, upper 90s, not too bad. I mean, that's pretty normal for this time of the year. Wait until Friday. Triple digits, 105 in Dallas, 99 in Oklahoma City. Yeah, it's getting hot as we head into the end of this week and this weekend. We don't stop there. It is likely to stay well above average in terms of temperatures from July 17th through the 21st. And unfortunately, we stay pretty dry out on the western side of the U.S. What does that mean? That means that we are likely to have that fire season increase, that fire risk increase on the western side of the U.S. So what we have here is warm temperatures, dry air. A lack of rainfall will increase the fire danger out on the west coast. You go up to the north, you go out to the east, and we do have a pretty good chance to see consistent rainfall. What does that mean? Well, of course, that flooding risk is still there. We still have to watch that flood risk, but thankfully, fire season and hopefully cooler temperatures is what fire season will stay away, and cooler temperatures will hopefully stick around if we have that consistent rainfall. You know, sometimes consistent rainfall can also mean very, very muggy conditions, very moist and muggy conditions, which isn't always fun. It just kind of depends on what the weather wants to do that day, right? This time of the year, it's just a little bit of everything. Alrighty, thanks for joining us on our forecast today. Do we have any extra questions that we haven't gotten to yet? Nothing weather-wise. Alrighty. Well, thanks for joining us. If you do have any weather questions, I'm pretty good within the next hour of going back onto this post and answering any of those questions for you. Sometimes I even include a graphic with that. But hey, follow us on all of our social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, and give us a call if you're interested in a wind, hail, or tornado map. Our meteorologists map storms 24/7, and they don't just map where the storms are, but they map what are the storms doing. Are they producing hail? Are they producing wind? Are they producing a tornado? So we have all of those maps at hailtrace.com. Email us at info@hailtrace.com if you are interested in a map or more information. All right, thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we'll see you back here for your forecast and hopefully a better voice this time, same place tomorrow.